As Walt Whitman noted in his poem Song of Myself, every man contains within him multitudes. Deleuze and Guattari equally noted in A Thousand Plateaus that within all of us are several. Man is no longer an individual, and Deleuze controls societies. We have since become individuals. We have torn down the separate context of identity or identicality, having no place to escape to, a prison without bars or borders. The organized molar identity is sculpted by the virtual and molecular flow of machinic desire, leading to lines of flight, escaping outside so as to become other. Alchemic man becomes the chimera, where W.B. Yeats's rough beast from the Second Coming brings chaos via a loss of human morality. The spiritus mundi, or world spirit, goes back to the unconscious association of archetypes. Life, death, and rebirth endlessly repeat like an eternal waltz of this world. Demonic and occult conjurings from the unconscious become commonplace. To land, they call to us like Cthulhu from the future, wrapped within Kant's noumenal will, given over to Augustine or Bergson's eternal notion of time, an eternal present. We have noted how Mina Bergson married Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, and despite Henry Bergson's own disbelief in the occult craft, his philosophy fits many themes housed in the Hermetic tradition. All becomes one. Pluralisms become monisms in the Deleuzian manner. Crowley links the all to the one and the none via the Night of Pan. Land celebrates the Deleuzian death drive of the zero itself, lost to nihility and libidinal materialism. The libidinal energies of the unconscious are tied to the id, used to become other via machinic desire, left unrepressed in the schizoanalytic sense, disregarding the discontent felt by man when he represses his desires so as to safeguard civilization. The Freudian reality principle sets limitations in life. Men seeking the pleasure principle feel repressed. Herbert Marcuse commented on a surplus repression where man in the Marxist sense of exploitation was repressed beyond the need merely to ensure civilization's survival in capitalistic societies. As Marx noted, capitalism is akin to a demonic summoning, containing within it the seeds for its own sense of self-destruction. Much akin to Goethe's Sorcerer's Apprentice, things become chaotic and the magician loses all control. The unconscious aspects of techne take over. Death comes with the turn of the tarot cards. Seeking Lacanian jouissance or Bataille's transgression, man goes beyond the pleasure principle of Freud so as to become other, not repressing his machinic desires. Touching the transcendental via poetic limitations, as Rimbaud noted, seeking what is behind the veil of Isis herself, seeking occult illumination and enlightenment. Like the hive of the bees, which is an important occult symbol, especially in Freemasonry, man gathers wisdom and illumination much in the manner that bees go from flower to flower, gathering pollen so as to make their sweet honey. Adhering to the archetype of death and rebirth, man becomes something other than what he once was. But as noted with machinic eros, desire is a two-way street, and what man becomes may in fact be more organized and repressive than the order which came before. The fear of the American losing his or her First Amendment freedom leads to the loss of the logos. While Deleuze and Land would celebrate over the loss of semiotics due to their disdain towards codified identity or identicality, which appears philosophically fascist, neither call for censorship, as noted with Land's appreciation for artists like Bataille and the Chapman brothers. Yet censorship does not suppress speech from two sides, it suppresses it only from one side, and in doing so loses the language of the other. We lose the paradoxical aspect of language itself. Much like desire, language contains an ambivalent nature, as noted by Derrida, or Robert Anton Wilson, or Lewis Carroll, or the Principia Discordia. As noted in the Pentabarf, a Discordian is prohibited from believing in what he or she reads, which is a self-contradictory statement, often known as the liar's paradox, since language, as we noted with Crowley, proves paradoxical. However, with there only being one side and a normally two-sided coin, all becomes either yin or yang, but never both at once, as noted in something like the Tao. And so with the loss of ambivalence comes the loss of creating new meta-narratives for the future. Like propagation or difference in repetition, one needs two terms to create the third. As we noted with Crowley, lapis lazuli is an important gem in the occult, seen as a sacred stone by the Egyptians, tied to Nut, and used to make ultramarine, the Marian blue of the Virgin Mary. To Gabriel Cotrен, like Mary, it is his virginal mother or mater, by which we become other. Like difference in repetition or the Hermetic tradition of alchemy, man transforms or transmutes himself into something other, essentially becoming his or her own father and mother in some sense, birthing himself via autopoiesis, reproducing ourselves through desire and autopoiesis, deterritorialized and then reterritorialized into new organisms, becoming reborn through our poetic breath. As W.B. Yeats states in his poem Lapis Lazuli, all things fall and are built again, and those that build them again are gay. Two Chinamen, behind them a third are carved in lapis lazuli. Over them flies a long-legged bird, a symbol of longevity. Via death comes rebirth, flying like an immortal phoenix after having risen from out the exhausted ashes. But without the freedom of such speech, which paradoxically contains opposites or multitudes within itself, our breath, our pneuma, or spirit, and fantasia itself, the inner mind, becomes suppressed and thus repressed in the psychoanalytic sense. As Nicholas Luhmann noted, autopoiesis is what allows social systems to sustain themselves, connected via communication to reduce complexity, leading to an organized body or being. This would fit in with the Deleuzian fascist system of order and control, where communication is limited, reducing complexity, serving the social system for its own continued sense of survival. In Meltdown, Land notes the importance of the Tao in the Eastern tradition, juxtaposed with the West's own Hegelian values, driving the West towards an organized fascist monism, as opposed to a deorganized system that produces more pluralities and multiplicities, i.e., akin to the 10,000 things in the Taijitu model. As Reuters notes, with Trump's inclination to reduce communication using the FCC to suppress dissonance, we are becoming more organized, just as Luhmann hypothesized. We have become all yin and no yang, light that has sought to dissolve itself of its own shadow. But as any wise man of the East does know, to remove the shadow is to remove the object itself that the sun stares upon. As alchemists note, all light is found within darkness, demonically summoned from the Jungian unconscious. And so all becomes but a desert wasteland of ruin. As the alchemically minded Percy Shelley noted before his wife created the transhuman monster and alchemic homunculus of Dr. Frankenstein, in his poem Ozymandias, man is reminded of how the grandest of decrees from kings mean little when faced with a fallen civilization that has been left to nothing but ruin and rubble. As Spengler foresaw, civilizations are but organic beings with limited lifespans. As the West declines, Ozymandias becomes all the more important a poetic piece. Amidst all the propaganda, things become too one-sided and thus incestuous in the Landian sense. Having lost contact via censorship with the other or the alien, the outsider, E.T. cannot phone home. Man cannot find his way gnostically back to the pleroma, nor can he overcome the demiurgic deity. Like the sacred cow of Discordianism or the Tao itself, akin to men and women lost in lovemaking, internal opposites are needed to birth anything new into being. Like genes or memes, without connections to the outside, the gene or meme pool cannot spread or diversify itself. The king dies, but no new king can be reborn. Too incestuous in spirit, evolutionary links are lost. The spirit of language proves a paradox, but when language cannot prove to be paradoxical, language can no longer come to live. Language becomes but a hollow husk of itself, forced to accept its own extinction. Doorways are seen as both entrances as well as exits, as noted with Hecate, the triple-bodied goddess, connected to the afterlife, tied to death and rebirth, and the two-faced Janus, a liminal space. This liminal space leaves all to an eternal present, but with the loss of this liminal space, death may in fact prove decisive. Like Venusberg and Tannhauser's Gate, fairies are tied to the transcendental. As noted in Peter Pan, where Pan is all, Tinkerbell falls, drinking the poison, the pharmacon, which means both poison and cure, meant for Peter, returning to life only after having been met with the applause of people who believe in fairies, who believe in the transcendental, the alien or outsider. Without this other, which makes each of us ambivalent inside, a multitude of many, there is no light left to return Tinkerbell to life. The phoenix falls and fades, unable to rise from out its own ashes. After all, in alchemy, one must be both above and below, as above so below. Like Robert Graves noted, this is the realm of fairies and fusiliers. Levy's Baphomet deterritorializes and reterritorializes by dissolving and coagulating. To separate ourselves from our other is akin to breaking a magnet in two. He who comes to break a magnet in half in an attempt to remove one of the poles will soon see how new poles are formed on the freshly cut surfaces. With the death of the old neoliberal left, who have since taken a centralized stance, perhaps a new left will be born from out the broken magnetic domains and the many multitudes of man. After all, as noted in Mark 5:9, people can be possessed by a multitude of demons linked to a legion. And as the unconscious demonic desires in man are made manifest, exorcisms, when tracing its etymology to the os of Horkos, the son of the Discordian goddess Eris, will be needed, filled with the Aranese fury. Only the seal of Solomon can come to control such demonic currents. The occult concerns itself with the cult of agriculture, where the spirit of liminal language grows like the fruit in Eden's garden.